Welcome, people of the life, light, and the dark. Be careful of what you ask for, especially when it's not necessarily of your real conscience. It may be programmed into you to think in said ways. It may not be of your own thinking. That's why it's always important to discuss these things that you hear with self first before you make a move on things. And these things require a person to have already a balanced set of principles within themselves, where you can look at the two and see what is safe for you, what is dangerous for you, without walking blindly through life and being one of the casualties of life, of course. Because when you're walking around blindly and you're not making your own decisions, you're allowing decisions to be made for you. Many times, they're probably the wrong decisions because we're too busy dealing with things from the outside of ourselves because we think there's a God, we think there's something outside of us that is going to make it happen. But it starts within you first. It always starts within you, discussing it with amongst yourself. Even though people are telling me different things, I go within myself, and then that's where the ultimate decisions are made. So let's take a look at some consequences and some things that we probably didn't really pay attention to because people outside of us buzzing in our ears had us looking at things from a one side, and had us tugging at our heart strings and only utilizing one percentage of our brains instead of utilizing our whole brain. So let's take a look. First, I'm going to start with this news, actual really good newscaster, and he's talking about uh, Biden and how he must have forgotten about he was part of the most divisive party. Okay, and this goes to say that divisiveness is when you take one group over another group. The Dems is known as a strong group for Black people, but should it be that way? Shouldn't be even across the board. Yes, but once again, I submit to you that the only reason why they want our Black struggles is so they can utilize it and take it and change it into something different. We're going to see that here. Here we go.
Upset about the American presidential election. Media networks don't decide elections. Invariably in America, the courts do, and the courts set aside elections when they're illegal. The US media have declared Joe Biden the winner in a tight race. They did that on Sunday. If Biden has won fairly and squarely, and I'll be looking at the fairly bit later on, if Biden has won, make no mistake, this is no straightforward victory for the Democrats. The polls were wrong, the media haters were wrong. The Trump record resonated with almost 50% of Americans. All the Democrats had going for them was to mobilize anti-Trump forces with a very biased and almost universal support of the media. The so-called blue wave didn't happen, barely a trickle. You see the map? And of course, if the popular vote is valid, it needs to be remembered that Trump, it's almost all red, have a look at it, that Trump didn't campaign in places like California, New York, and Illinois. But with everything stacked against him for 4 years, the popular vote will finish up somewhere like 51 to 49 if things stay as they are. As the Virginia Democrat Abigail Spanberger said at the weekend, this is a Democrat, I quote, "We need to be pretty clear about the fact that Tuesday, from a congressional standpoint, was a failure. We lost members we should not have lost." Noting that the promised landslide against Trump didn't occur, the Democrat female Spanberger offered the opinion, quote, "If we are classifying Tuesday as a success and we run this way again, we'll get effing torn apart in 2022, unquote. The biggest bloc voting for Trump were married women. Why not, in terms of what he did for the economy and his stand against violence in the streets? He increased the black vote and the Hispanic vote for Republicans because of the economic improvements in those communities under Trump. The gay vote doubled for Trump. The reality was simple. The three poorest states in mainland America, Arkansas, Mississippi, and West Virginia, all voted Republican. The wealthiest, Maryland, New Jersey, Hawaii, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, all voted Democrat. It's the same in Australia, isn't it? Who represents the little guy? Not the lefties. Who are the mob in the Australian electorate voting Green? You'll find them in Josh Frydenberg's electorate, in wealthy parts of Melbourne, Mossman in Sydney, lefties. And last week's state election in Queensland, Indooroopilly, Toowong, St Lucia, voting Green. The rich purging themselves of their guilt. And so the left continues with their false narrative about uniting America. So Biden said, at the weekend he made this point, "I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide but to unite, who doesn't see red or blue states but just the United States." Well, it sounds great, but it's rhetorical nonsense. Who was it who divided America? Right from Trump's inauguration, Democrats refused to turn up, except for the Clintons and the Obamas. Is that when Trump divided America? Can you imagine if the Republicans didn't show up for Obama's inauguration because they lost? 19 minutes after Trump was inaugurated, the Washington Post declared the impeachment campaign had started. Was that when Trump divided America? Remember when the Democrat leader Nancy Pelosi ripped up Trump's State of the Union address in front of the world, showing total disrespect for the President of the United States? Did that unify America? And remember the 3 years and over $30 million spent trying to prove that Trump only won because of Russian collusion, not because Americans voted for him. As many ask, was that when Trump divided America? And what about Bloomberg and the multimillionaires who went into Florida to buy votes to defeat Trump? And Bloomberg wasn't alone. Check out the other millionaire donors who could afford the advertising to tell America about this appalling man, Trump. Has there ever been any recognition of anything that Trump has ever done? Even today, young people are frightened to wear a Trump cap. They're taught in class that Trump's a horrible president. You ask your sons and daughters, what happens to them if at school they speak up in defense of President Trump? Biden said in the debate that he'd close down the oil industry, quote, "I will transition out of it," yes. What did the media make of that dangerous promise? Nothing. They were apologists at every turn for Biden. We've seen 4 years of persistent determination to silence Trump supporters, to deny Trump the validity of his 2016 victory, and to sponsor any left-wing outfit that could be mobilized to destabilize or denigrate Donald Trump. What on earth does Biden mean when he says, quote, "I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide but to unite"? Does his cognitive decline enable him to forget that the heads of the Democratic Party ticket, who've waged a divisive war for 4 years against Donald Trump, and where were they? Wasn't it Madonna, the great Democrat supporter, who days after the Trump inauguration told a Washington, D.C. protest that she had, quote, "thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House"? And Biden and Kamala Harris now are pleading to unite America when they sponsored an unrelenting campaign to remove Trump from office by whatever means Trump's opponents could get their hands on. And if that includes riots and protests and anarchy, so be it. If it means destroy property, put lives at risk, leave entire city blocks in ruins, so be it. It was left to Trump alone to oppose what he called the, quote, "left-wing rioting and mayhem, the direct result of decades of left-wing indoctrination in our schools." Trump is the man who said, quote, "there's a new far-left fascism that demands absolute allegiance. If you don't follow its demands, you'll be censured and punished." He said, "This is not going to happen to us. We will not be tyrannized." Well, he won 71 million votes in endorsement of that view, but there is no fighter in government anywhere in the world against this indoctrination. We now appear to have a leader of the Western world, 77 years of age, past his prime, who may well become the weakest president in history, because it's clear he won't control the Senate. His party lost seats in the House of Representatives. Biden may have won 74 million votes, more than have ever been cast for any presidential candidate in history. I might add the Trump vote is more than was ever achieved by Obama. But it's because Trump held up the Republican vote that the Republicans will control the Senate. They've picked up a net gain of 6 seats in the House of Representatives. But if you believe the media and the left, Americans were reeling with moral revulsion of Trump. It didn't happen. The Republicans now control the governorships of 27 of the 50 states. I repeat, more people voted for Trump than ever voted for Obama. There's every chance that Biden will be president, but already the Senate and a majority of the state governors are Republicans. The Supreme Court has a majority of judicial conservatives, and with a majority of only 8 in the House of Representatives, by midterm 2022, when they have the election, the whole administrative machinery of America, the Senate, the House of Representatives, the majority of state governors, and the Supreme Court could be Republican controlled. It is a phenomenal Trump legacy, which prompted even one of his critics to say of Biden, quote, the former vice president has defeated a political colossus, and so it has been proven, unquote. The size of the Trump vote shows that many Americans believe the Democrats, as one critic wrote at the weekend, quote, have drifted too far from the kitchen table politics of jobs, wages, faith and family that once made them the natural party for working and middle-class families, unquote. Indeed, the same critic said, quote, it's hard to escape the conclusion that Trump would have been re-elected comfortably if there were no pandemic. The shock for many was the anemic nature of Biden's victory, unquote. As the US Spectator's Stephen L. Miller has written, Biden may well be, quote, the weakest Democratic president since 1884. Well, it's platitudinous nonsense for Biden now to be quoting from the Bible, having not once uttered a syllable to oppose the relentless, divisive and dishonest attacks against President Trump. Now, because it suits, he argues, I quote, the Bible tells us everything's a season, a time to build, a time to reap, a time to sow, a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America, unquote. Well, he didn't write that. It's a miracle he didn't choke saying it. 2 final points. Trump has transformed the Republican Party permanently. He won't go away, nor will his 70-odd million supporters. That's not the issue. The real issue is, what today do you think are Putin and President Xi and the Ayatollahs? What are they thinking now that America has embraced weakness? The election said one thing above all else. Despite the attempted brainwashing of the electorate by Hollywood, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, and almost all of the media, 70+ million Americans refused to slump, defeated and silenced. I suspect Donald Trump won't either. The world needs a Trump. So do we. What do you think? Alan at skynews.com.au or the text line 0414 000 848.
And so I created the Deference Review Board as but one fix to the many problems that we encountered in that agency. And that fix was an institutional reform that was supposed to endure throughout the life of the EB-5 program office that I created. And when I read the Inspector General's report, that was the first time.
All right, let me see. Okay. Let's get off that one and let's go to this one.
What do you think Joe Biden's view on China is?
Hold on. See, we're being fed this. If it wasn't for this epidemic now, this epidemic has really changed the American minds. For some reason, it's symbolic that it came from China and it spread. You know what I'm saying? It's, all of that is symbolic in a way. So actually, we're taking on a. If you notice, if you pay attention, we're taking on a lot of the mentality of the communist authoritarianism uh, party.
Well, I don't think he has a an overly optimistic view, right? I'm afraid, a little bit about trying to turn the clock back to 2016 and going back to cooperation engagement. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Chinese Communist Party will try, right? Will try to lure him back into that with false promises. And what they're going to say is, "Hey, President Biden, we'll work with you on North Korea if you just let the pressure off us a little bit. Hey, what we'll do is we'll work with you on climate change." Well, meanwhile, China is circumventing the UN sanctions against North Korea, and whereas we have a North Korea policy and strategy, they have a U.S. policy and strategy. They see North Korea as an opportunity to drive us out of the United States, out of Northeast Asia, as the first step in isolating its regional adversary, Japan. And then on climate change, China is building 70 coal-fired plants a year, 70. And so, let's see actions that match the words. And I don't think we should be lured in to these long, strategic dialogues. They ultimately go nowhere. I think we have to maintain the competitive approach to China.
It sounds like for Joe Biden, you think when it comes to foreign policy, China is his first, second, third biggest problems.
I think so, but I think I also, though, Tom, would not undervalue the importance of the fight against jihadist terrorist organizations. I mean, in many ways, these terrorist organizations are stronger today than they were on September 10th. 2001, and that's because they are orders of magnitude larger. Remember, those who committed the most devastating terrorist attack in history against the United States on September 11th, 2001, were the Mujahideen alumni of the resistance to the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. Now the Al-Qaeda, the ISIS alumni are orders of magnitude larger than these groups ever were, and they're pursuing the most destructive weapons on Earth. And they're better connected to each other. All of them carry encrypted communications in their pockets. They have slick recruiting tools. And so I think that we have to sustain our efforts alongside partners. And this is another area where Australia's been a real leader. I mean, Australia's efforts in Afghanistan and across the Middle East have been immensely important to sustaining effective counterterrorism efforts.
What do you think China's endgame is in all of this?
China's endgame is to create exclusionary areas of primacy across the Indo-Pacific region so they can dictate the terms. They want to recreate the tributary system where countries have servile relationships with China, and China is at the center. I mean, you see this quite blatantly, right, with what would be the largest land grab in history, so to speak, in the South China Sea. China also wants to dominate the emerging data-driven global economy. They want to lead in advanced manufacturing, and they want to do so by stealing technology and applying that technology in a way that gives them a competitive advantage. They also want to engage in economic practices that drive competitors out of the global market, while they also pursue control of global logistics, right? China runs about 80 airports and port facilities around the world, for example, on both sides of the Panama Canal, and they have facilities adjacent to Bab el-Mandeb and other strategic locations. You saw what they did in Sri Lanka by taking over a massive port, by indebting the country, trading debt for equity, and taking over the port. But also, China wants to control global communications infrastructure as well. This is why Huawei is such a great danger, and we should never allow that company to put in the fifth generation communications infrastructure. And the question I would ask countries, that are considering whether or not to let Huawei in, and this is where Australia's been extremely strong, but we should ask our friends, hey, do you really expect the Chinese Communist Party to treat your citizens better than they treat their own people? Just look at what they're doing internally. That's the model. And they're exporting that authoritarian model quite aggressively. And if you want to know what that looks like, look at a country like Zimbabwe, for example. So I think it's immensely important for us to compete effectively. And we have to do it together, Tom, because if we don't, the Chinese Communist Party will play us off against each other and continue its various forms of aggression.
But it's
The
already
picture you
started.
paint sounds almost like the US and China are heading towards a second Cold War.
Well, that analogy is useful to some extent, but it's a different kind of competition. It's different because our economies are intertwined in ways that our economies were never intertwined with the with the Soviet Union or the Warsaw Pact. So that gives us different kinds of leverage, but it also complicates the heck out of the situation. I think for this is a competition that cuts across the private sector in a way that is unprecedented. And I think that our businesses, our corporations should come together in mutual agreement and say that we will only adhere by the laws established by a government and a country in which we're doing business if those laws do not cut against the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. And so I think we ought to really be careful not to aid and abet the Chinese Communist Party, not to invest our money in the companies that are aimed at gaining a differential advantage over us militarily and in the emerging global economy. So I think we just have to be smarter about the nature of the threat. It's really an issue of education, because now it's really not just our government, not just our military and our diplomatic corps that's involved in this competition. It's all of our societies are involved in this competition.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.
All right. Next. Oh. I don't know why I did that. Next. Let me see. Okay. This is how, easily this pandemic has worked on the minds of our people. And I'm using this next person. It's a big YouTuber. But I just want you to pay attention to the words he says, his mentality about this whole Rona, and how it's really not good for Black folks to be really taken into this, because this is I keep repeating myself saying how they're using our Black struggles, and it's definitely been used. It's definitely been used. And here you go. I'm just gonna show you this how, and this is just to give up your rights and to infringe on other people's rights. You see, as long as you're wearing a mask, why are you worried about me wearing a mask? As long as you're wearing a mask, why are you worried about me wearing a mask?
COVID is very real, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, do not be out here thinking that it's not real whatsoever. And I will say, I'm going to caution this to Black folks. I've seen some of you in these nightclubs online. None of you are wearing masks. Do you realize they have a new, stronger variant of COVID now that's more contagious, even right here in the United States? Okay? And you think you're immune. And if like I said, that sickens me to the core to see some of you doing that silly crap. But in this video, you have this brother that is very upset. And we know who the leaders are of not wearing the mask. That's for sure. They made it a political movement. Usually it's attached to these MAGA terrorists, these Trump terrorists. But the brother saw them in there, not wearing the mask, and he got pissed off, and rightfully so. Let's go roll that clip.
That part. And I do feel you, sir, because there's a lot of people died. Tell them.
This brother has every reason to be upset. Trust me, because there's a lot of people in the community that are dying of that. There are people then a lot of people's families have had COVID and really dealt with that issue and situation, and it's hard.
I don't think it's mega terrorism because the people obviously had masks on their face. So what was this brother screaming at? The whole thing is, look, you got to look not just through one part of your percentage of your brain. We have to look and examine the whole picture. Yes, lady, he's a big Black YouTuber. And this is the danger over being Black first, is that we're Black first. And I never wanted, when I came on and started speaking on Facebook, that's one of the things I put first, was that we are more. We got to look, because they're going to want us to look on the surface. They're going to use our surface looks against us, because the surface says a lot about who we are already. But when we have the mind, that's why it's important to have self-knowledge, because it's deeper. It goes deeper than our skin. And when we overlook that and don't know why the skin, but we're gonna run around and focus on the skin, then we're doomed to fail, because we're much more within. We're the melanin. The melanin is the key to life. So we're focused on the outside and we'd be winding it up, but all the while we don't know why that is. It's so we can deal and handle balance in a balanced style what we're up against in this existence, in our experience. We have both physical and spiritual, right? But a lot of people don't hold to their spiritual. They don't know the power of the spiritual part of us. And that too is important, so that we won't be taken advantage of. But right now, our people have been taken advantage of, and our struggle. And we don't even know why we struggle. Many think it's because we're just Black, but it's more to it than just that. There's a science, deep science behind us. There's more than just the physical struggle. So once we can understand that, then we can see the bigger picture, that has been utilized. Our struggles, our physical struggles, are being utilized against not only us, but us to go against, when we're supposed to be like gods. We're not even supposed to be in the equation, but they were able to pull us in the equation and get take control over our minds, body and soul. Because look at the Black people that went into the political world and have taken the sides of a very dangerous party, and yet they don't know, when it was never our fight. But they would never know that, because all they can say is, we're Black, we're Black, we're Black. Yeah, but there's more to it than just that. There's way more to it than just that. And like he's spreading around this sickness. Let's finish listening.
No, because you don't know if that family member may make it or not with the situation. Some people, it's mild on them. It's no big deal. Some people feel like they was at death's door, and then some people didn't come back at all. And that's why this brother's upset. More and more people is going to start reacting like that brother is reacting in this video, because you got close to 400,000 people have died of COVID, and they still walking around here with no mask. Now, what's going to happen is, and I'm pretty sure probably Biden, I hope he would do it, come down with a very, very strict mask requirement, especially for a lot of businesses at the federal level. Okay,
Hmm.
just like they tell you no shirt, no shoes, no
So
service.
he wants to
Well,
take
I've seen
away.
one business do this so far and say no
So
mask, no service.
So he wants to see our rights infringed upon. He wants the Constitution to not even be a factor. He wants the Constitution to not be a factor. So he's easing on into the authoritarianism, which they accuse Trump of. But you know how they played that psychology, right? They played that psychology on us to get us to give up our rights. So they made us think, okay, the left side, they made us think that Trump is the authoritarianism, totalitarianism, or whatever they call it. They made him out to be the Hitler, right? But we all know that Hitler he was just a puppet in the time. We know the United States was in part of it, England, all that stuff. So we know that we understand that history very well. And we know the people that were behind that. And they're always going to run around trying to get control. Always going to be around to try to get control. Always going to be challenging you to get to the power and control. So right here, he is willing to give up his free rights, and he doesn't even know one thing about what he's talking about at this moment when he says these things. But let's go on.
That's how it has to be. Now they're talking about freedom. Carry your free self to your house. You don't have to wear no mask at your house. But when it comes to other people, as of right now, we are in a pandemic, and folks are getting sick and tired of you walking around here like there's nothing going on, and you are what I would call the COVID carriers. Anytime I don't see you with a mask, I just say, "Oh, that's one of those COVID carriers over there." Because what would stop you from getting anything? And of course, you got a lot of silly black folk that follow everything that their Mzungu mommy and daddy do, and they're gonna repeat what their Mzungu mom and daddy say. Which I shake my head at them. I say, there's some black folks that's gonna go down with the ship, and we just gotta just let those black folks go, unfortunately. But wear your mask, ladies and gentlemen. If you know any nurses or doctors,
yes,
why don't you talk to them? Those who worked in COVID units. Why don't you talk to them and ask them about masks? Ask them about COVID itself if you have the opportunity. Okay, I did that. I had a long conversation not too long ago with my sister-in-law. She works in a COVID unit, and she told me every scenario of it, from people that was healthy, that had no health problems at all, and it took them out. People that didn't have no conditions, and then after that, one lady, she said, had COPD after having COVID. Understand? Some people have organ failure with COVID. I mean, this is nothing to play with, people. This is nothing to play with at all. And so when you see those kind of people that you saw in this video, yeah, it pisses you off because they just trying to spread crap. If you want to have COVID at your house, keep it over there, but other people don't want this mess. This government has failed America. Failed. Trump failed. He is a failure. On top of the terrorist attack, he's a freaking failure. Look how many people that's dead. That's underneath his watch. He is the worst president ever. He's the worst. I've seen a lot of them. Like, he didn't top them all. He's the worst. And so people, wear your mask. Wear your mask. Wear your mask. My God, wear it. It's about trying to save your life here. And if you don't care about your life, at least wear it enough to care about others. How about that?
Yes, Jeff.
Stop being so freaking selfish. But leave me a comment and think the situation with this brother going in on this, I say COVID carrier, because that's what they are.
But the whole thing is, as long as he's wearing his mask, there should not be any worries over COVID. If you're in the store, if you're in the grocery store, or you're outside and you see people without masks, know that you've already protected yourself with your rights, your freedom, and all you have to do is welcome by. Welcome by. You see? It's just like it's ludicrous where we're going to, where we're headed to. You know what I'm saying? So China already infiltrated America. Let's get into this next one. Let's get into the nitty. I think this is my last one, guys, before I go. Let's see. Okay, I wanted to go back. I'll probably go over the one where Trump was speaking about it. Let me go look at it.
She's also wondering if Putin had anything to do with the Capitol riots. Now, she spoke to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi about this on her podcast released yesterday. Take a listen.
I would love to see his phone records to see whether he was talking to Putin the day that the insurgents invaded our capital.
Yeah, so that right there suggesting the attack was possibly premeditated, possibly orchestrated by the Kremlin. She wants to find all of that out. The House Speaker says that another investigation is appropriate and says that there is support for it in Congress. So we're looking at impeachment, guys, and a possible investigation as President Trump leaves office.
We shall see. In the meantime, First Lady Melania Trump issues her farewell message.
Yeah, that's right. The last time we're going to see Melania Trump as First Lady in the foreseeable future. She released her farewell message on Twitter yesterday, and in the nearly 7-minute long address, she called it the honor of a life.
And make sure you download the Fox News app, open your camera, scan the QR code that is down there on your screen. Have a good day. Fox and Friends starts now. Bye-bye.
This morning, the nation's capital on high alert ahead of tomorrow's inauguration. This city is locked down in unprecedented ways never before seen.
The perception of an insider threat is taking on a partisan element. Democratic Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee.
You've got to figure that in the Guards, which is predominantly more conservative, 75% might want to do something.
You're making cheap politics out of it to attack Trump supporters.
New president, where's Biden? He's going to help all of us. He's given us 100 days to get to the U.S.
Right now, it's the perception that our borders are going to be open that are driving these caravans.
How are we going to deprogram the cult of Trump?
We have to turn down the capability of these conservative influencers to reach these huge audiences.
That kind of totalitarian crackdown on free speech is going to come and bite them in the end.
It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as First Lady. Always choose love over hatred, peace over violence.
Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021, when we start this hour with a Fox News alert. This morning, the nation's capital is on high alert ahead of tomorrow's inauguration at noon on Wednesday.
Yeah, he's going to have his hand on the Bible tomorrow at noon. Hundreds of active duty troops are joining security efforts.
And Griff Jenkins is already there in the nation's capital with the latest on the potential threats. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Will, Ainsley, and Steve. I am here. I'm inside basically a locked box. It is unprecedented how secure the nation's capital is right now. They have got a secure perimeter boxed in from the White House all the way down to the Capitol and several points in between. And even more security is coming. In fact, later today, major bridges into and out of the city will close through the inauguration as well. The acting defense secretary, Chris Miller, had this to say yesterday, saying, quote, "While we have no intelligence indicating an insider threat, we are leaving no stone unturned in securing the Capitol." Well, William Walker, the commanding general of the D.C. National Guard, says they're vetting those troops. Listen.
The United States Army CID and the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigations are conducting checks on all 25,000 guardsmen that will be here supporting the United States Secret Service. This bubble of security that we're providing has the privilege to be there.
This, as the Washington Post reports this morning, the FBI warned law enforcement agencies of a potential threat from lone wolves and adherents to the far-right group QAnon, who have, quote, indicated they plan to come to Washington for President-elect Joe Biden's swearing-in ceremony. Now, all this as the celebration prep's also in full swing. Last night, we saw a field of flags lit on the National Mall in honor of the thousands of Americans who cannot attend in person, and a parade was rehearsed, but unlike parades of the past, I never thought I'd say these names in the same sentence, but Lil Wayne, Steve Bannon, and Julian Assange, all on the list of possibly receiving a pardon. We expect about 50 to 100 names could be on that list, and we could see it today. Will, Ainsley, Steve?
It could be a blizzard of pardons later today. All right, Griff, thank you very much. Now we want to talk a little bit about something that was said that is just so jaw-dropping, and it's a great example of fear-mongering. Steve Cohen, who is a Democrat congressman from the great state of Tennessee, I had this observation. Griff was just talking about the National Guard. That guy right there, he said essentially, you know, the National Guard, they're mostly white men. And they might want to do something to, and mostly white men voted for Donald Trump, which means the people who are protecting Joe Biden might want to do something to Joe Biden. I'm not kidding. Here's the tape from CNN.
The Guard is 90 some odd %, I believe, male. Only about 20% of white males voted for Biden. You got to figure that in the Guard, they're probably not more than 25% of the people that are there protecting us who voted for Biden. The other 75% are in the class that would be the large class of folks who might want to do something.
Might want to do something. And he said later, I've got absolutely no evidence, but I'm going to say it on TV anywhere. That is fear-mongering.
He's saying if they voted for Trump, if they're Trump supporters, they can't be trusted.
Well, because they're white.
And wow. Well, the acting Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, said he has received no intel indicating a potential threat within the ranks, within the thousands of Guard members that are there to protect the president during inauguration. Jeremy Hunt, West Point grad and Army veteran, this is what he said. I served in the Army. I served with people of all different political views. What binds us together was a common creed, the oath of the Constitution. People who plan on doing some craziness at the inauguration have no business wearing the uniform. And if you are a U.S. congressman who sows seeds of hatred, you have no business leading this country. He should go home.
Yeah, that guy's going to be with us in the 7 o'clock hour right here on Fox and Friends.
You described it as jaw-dropping. It is utter insanity. Let's be clear about what we're talking about here. We're talking about a racial and political purity test. So putting our military under that kind of loyalty requirement based upon their race and based upon who they voted for. And make no mistake, this isn't about President Trump. In the end, it's not even about Trump supporters, and it's not even about Republicans. It's about anybody who dares step out of line, anyone who dares dissent. And there is nothing that is sacred. They'll be protected from this kind of purity test. As given here, our military. It is truly unbelievable. And Dan Bongino, friend of the program, who was a Secret Service agent, talked about, for President Obama, whom he disagreed with, politically, talked about that idea of nothing sacred and the oath you take when you serve in these jobs. Listen to this.
You're making cheap politics out of it, yes, to attack Trump supporters and people like me, unlike Steve Cohen, who actually put my caboose on the line to protect Barack Obama and his family. Gotcha. And I did it proudly. And you know what? I do it again. Because that's what we do in the Secret Service. It's not a third world republic. And condemning our National Guard folks because of the color of their skin, like they can't do their job, they raised their right hand and swore to protect the Constitution. Don't insult them like that. But politicians, that's what they do. That's why they're politicians, and they don't have real jobs.
You know, people in the military don't pledge to serve other people. They pledge to serve the country. We're going to be talking about this throughout the morning. Something else tomorrow at noon when Joe Biden becomes president. His number one legislative issue after the coronavirus is going to be to overhaul our immigration system in the country right now, because have you noticed it's kind of broken? Well, he's going to have a flurry of executive orders. We don't know exactly what they are, but one of the things he wants to do is he wants to give citizenship, an 8-year path to citizenship for people who are in the country illegally. We have been showing you over the last 24 hours that caravan of thousands of people in Central America. They're coming to America. Why now?
They're having a new president. Where's Biden? He's going to help all of us. He's given us 100 days to get to the U.S.
That's right. All right. Where did that come from? Here's Joe Biden a while back.
First 100 days of my administration, no one will be deported at all. From that point on, the only deportations that will take place are commissions of felonies in the United States of America.
Okay, so you can understand where that guy got the idea, because he heard from Joe Biden, and Joe Biden won, and elections have consequences. But here's the fine print. It's in the Washington Post this morning. To wind up with this citizenship that Joe Biden is going to be proposing to Congress, you have to have been in the country on January 1st to keep people from rushing the border. In fact, all those people who are heading toward America would not qualify.
Well, how would you prove that you were in the country illegally at a certain date? How would they prove who was the border? Absolutely. It shows when you play those two clips back to back, Steve, when you have a migrant saying why they are forming a caravan, heading to the United States, and then playing the words of Joe Biden. It shows that your words have consequences, that people listen. And it's not just the potential migrants coming to the United States, it's the countries who can help in keeping that illegal immigration from forming at our border, countries like Mexico or Guatemala, who can play a role in stopping these caravans. But acting CBP Commissioner Mark Morgan has said that they are listening to Joe Biden's words as well. Listen to this.
We've had unprecedented cooperation with the government of Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries as well to really address this as a regional crisis that it is, and it's working. But right now, it's the perception that our borders are going to be open that are driving these caravans. What are these countries going to do at some point? They're going to say, wait a minute, we're doing everything that we're supposed to, that's been asked of us, but it's your policies, United States, that are actually driving and facilitating and fueling this illegal migration.
We've been told for 4 years that words have consequences. President Trump's words have consequences. Yeah. Clearly, Joe Biden's words have consequences. By the way, speaking of words, I've been concerned for quite some time that there's been this inflation of inflammatory language. In other words, we've been told, that the events of January 6th started out as chaotic. It formed into riotous. It was a riot, then insurrection, then sedition, then terrorism. And now the people who committed a horrendous act on January 6th are being described as terrorists. If you inflate language like this, if you continually push the bar out, what you do is you allow any manner of response, any manner of sin. And then you can get people like former journalist Katie Couric or former journalist Eugene Robinson saying things like this about Trump supporters. I want you to take a listen to this.
It's really bizarre, isn't it, when you think about how AWOL so many of these members of Congress have gotten. But I also think some of them are believing the garbage that they are being fed 24/7 on the internet by their constituents, and they bought into this big lie. And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump?
There are millions of Americans, almost all white, almost all Republicans, who somehow need to be deprogrammed. It's as if they're members of a cult, the Trumpist cult, and we have to be deprogrammed.
So, Steve Ainsley, you keep raising the bar of the description of what happened on January 6th. You keep expanding the pool of people you're talking about until you're talking about Trump supporters, and then you can respond with Orwellian language like deprogramming them. We are getting into a very scary authoritarian place quickly.
Sure. And one of the things they want to do is, we know that big tech, these monster monopolies, are trying to pull the plug on, they pulled the plug on Parler. Although Parler, it sounds like, is redoing their infrastructure, so they may be back. Although, you find the same stuff on Parler that you find on Twitter and Facebook, but they're still up. Wonder why? Oh, yeah, they're from the political right. But one of the things that people are suggesting, Ainsley, is that, to deprogram people, you got to turn off the supply of this information. So you got to pull the plug on certain outlets to lean to one way, and they're calling on the phone company, essentially Verizon and AT&T, and the cable companies. Hey, don't have those other voices. One of the reasons, Fox News Channel is one of the reasons people actually subscribe to cable TV. If the phone companies and the cable companies took Fox News Channel off, there would be a lot of people who would no longer want to subscribe to cable TV. So essentially, they would be making a business decision in addition to a political decision. But they should stay out of the politics business. Just appeal to everybody.
It would silence the conservatives. That's what they want. They want to cancel everyone. I mean, look at Josh Hawley's book deal. The president on social media canceled. You have even Manchin considering removing Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz from office using, I believe, the 14th Amendment.
Right. But my point is there are channels on television, on your cable
that
TV
might be next.
that you're watching right now. There are certain channels you love. A lot of people love the Fox News channel. But ultimately, if you don't agree with something you see on a channel, just click.
You got a remote in your hand.
Right. You get to decide with your remote. Don't take away those other voices. Otherwise, you are living in a silo, and that's how much you're going to wind up seeing.
Well, that's
Is that the America you really want?
That's what they want. The 75 million don't want that. I thought deplorable was bad. Now you're in a cult, and you need to be deprogrammed.
Exactly.
What? All right, let's hand it over to Jillian. She has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
Good morning, and let's begin with a Fox News alert now. Multiple law enforcement officers are shot and killed in the line of duty within 24 hours. A California sheriff deputy and canine were shot by a suspect during a shootout in Sacramento this morning. Deputies sent the canine after the...
All right, and now let me end it with a word from Trump. Let me end it with the word from Trump and what he had to say about the issue. What he knew. Okay. And then we'll call it a day. Oops. No, I didn't.
Is doing everything it can to make sure you don't get reelected. What specifically are they doing?
Well, China doesn't want to see me elected, and the reason is that we're getting billions and billions of dollars, many billions of dollars a month from China. China never gave our country anything. China gave us nothing, not 10 cents. And whether it was Biden in charge of China, which was a joke because they ripped off our country for 8 years. And in all fairness to Biden and Obama, this went on long before they got into office. You can go through many administrations until I came along. And then we signed a trade deal where they're supposed to buy, and they've been buying a lot actually, but that now becomes secondary to what took place with the virus. The virus situation is just not acceptable.
Do you think that withholding information about the virus is related to them trying to undermine your reelection?
I don't want to cast any dispersions. I just will tell you that China would like to see sleepy Joe Biden. They would take this country for a ride like you've never seen before.
Mr. President.
That's all. And with that said, true love, real peace, the higher self within your soul.
Speak for a moment on what we need to do, particularly around the consumer incentives until we get enough people purchasing. These consumer incentives are critical. Senator Alexander and I had a bipartisan bill to extend the current consumer credit.
How important it is for us to get information from outside, but we always have to begin to dissect it and communicate with our higher selves, our true self, our souls. And when that's done, then the world is clear and we can see with the most third eye, first eye. Until next time, peace, family, and stay safe out there.